And a short time ago, former Republican presidential candidate Newt Gingrich tweeted his opinion on the whole thing. Quote, "No one should kid themselves with the Sony collapse. America has lost its first cyber war. This is a very, very dangerous precedent," he says. Buck Sexton is host of the Buck Sexton Show on Blaze Radio, a former CIA officer and former NYPD Intelligence Division specialist. Buck, welcome. Good to have you here tonight.
Thank you.
This is a big deal. What does the FBI know about this at this point, do you think?
Right, it's bizarre and yet very serious at the same time. Look, the idea that this could be anyone other than North Korea wouldn't make any sense. Who would go through all this trouble? Who would have the capability? Who would care enough about this movie other than the North Korean government and its surrogates to actually engage in this? So at this point, whether the administration comes out or not and says it's official, I know there have been sources saying that the FBI has essentially said that it is North Korea. We basically know that it is. And the question becomes then, what should the response be? Because this is a very serious issue. If North Korea is allowed to do this, if they're allowed to essentially target private corporations on U.S. soil, maybe even private citizens, it has a very real chilling effect on our speech, on top of being a form of cyber terrorism. So this is something that requires a robust and dedicated response from the White House. I'm not sure we're going to get it, though. I think right now they're waiting to see what happens.
So far, we haven't heard boo from the White House. I mean, you might expect, when you think about after 9/11 and the concerns that there would be further threats, the message was always go on, live your life, do what you're going to do, go to the movies, go shopping. Now, you know, this is uncharted territory in many ways. A cyber war attack, a terrorist act in many ways. You know, we don't know this territory. We don't know how to play out, but it could happen again and again and again, given this precedent. Sony backed down.
Sony did back down, and I know that there's a lot of people who are saying that Sony essentially wimped out here, but let's be clear that Sony has been sucker punched by this whole situation. Their computers have been wiped clean. Everything has been taken off and, as we know, shared very broadly. It's embarrassed the company tremendously. It's going to cost it tens of millions of dollars at least, if not more. So there's some very serious issues that Sony is trying to deal with on top of whether they're even going to release this movie. And quite honestly, this is a national security issue. It's a First Amendment issue from the perspective of the American people. We shouldn't be cowed by foreign dictators.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Is it an overreaction? Because, you know, we're hearing there's no credible threats to any movie theaters in America based on this. And I also wonder, we've heard so much about our invasion of privacy, you know, that the NSA is everywhere, that they're watching everything. They don't seem to have any clue where this came from.
They keep telling us that this was very sophisticated, and the level of the attack on U.S. soil was unprecedented. But I'll say this, the American people do not react well. Forget about Sony for a second. We don't react well to some tin pot dictator anywhere in the world telling us what we can or cannot read, speak, or do. And
but that's what we've done.
No, well, that's what Sony has done. I think that there will be a movement among the American people to show some solidarity here in favor of the First Amendment. So far, they're saying they're not going to release it digitally. I'm not sure that's going to hold. Someone's going to get a copy of this. It will be distributed on the internet, and there will be, I think, a movement to spread the film far and wide. So the intent of this from North Korea, at least in part, which was to keep it from getting seen, that's not going to work.
The precedent that has been set for American corporations is you guys won. We backed out, we pulled our movie out, so you won.
Yeah,
that's what it looks like.
They won against Sony, but I'd say that, you know, between this and Cuba, it's a good day for tyranny, a bad day for freedom.
Wow, lots more on that to come. Buck, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So as Buck just mentioned, this move may end up costing Sony millions and millions of dollars in what amounts to a form of ransom, essentially. Joining me now is Howard Kurtz, host of Media Buzz. Howard, obviously a big loss for Sony. They backed down in this. Whether or not that was a good idea remains to be seen.
This is an undeniable victory, Martha, for the attackers, for terror attack on a major American corporation, and for their patrons in North Korea. And the media are now finally waking up to this. But, you know, Sony's in an impossible box. If it went ahead with this release and anyone got killed in any movie theater, the media, not to mention the lawyers, would crucify the company. But this needs to be covered, I think finally is being covered, with the seriousness that it deserves, because up until now, it's been almost lost among all the gossip reporting. What do people know about the Sony Pictures hack? One producer said Angelina Jolie was a spoiled brat, and another Sony executive made fun of President Obama and black movies. We've allowed ourselves in this business to become enablers, really, of those behind this vicious attack.
You know, but I find it curious because there's so many people who are outraged in this country by the involvement of government in private companies, in the business of private companies, in regulation, all of that. And yet, I mean, maybe we're going to hear more tomorrow when they make this FBI announcement that supposedly will definitely link it to North Korea. But we haven't heard from the government, look, go about your lives. Don't let this cow you. You know, and also I heard that 2 government officials were consulted on this movie and said, you know, we don't have a problem problem with the fact that Kim Jong-un's head blows up at the end of the movie. We're okay with it. Now they don't have too much to say about the whole thing.
Look, this was a stupid and reckless idea by Sony. How it gets marketed as a comedy, I have no idea. But it still is a blow against free speech, as dumb as the movie might be. And there, as you mentioned earlier, there is now nothing to stop other attackers from targeting any movie or magazine or newspaper article that displeases them. And many, many American companies are vulnerable.
Yeah, and they will. You can bet on it after this. Howard, thank you very much.
Thanks, Martha.